If you can't handle me sleeping with the CEO and your friends, then leave. They're real men, not impotent. My wife snapped, her voice sharp and cutting through the tension in the room like shattered glass. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, as if the walls themselves had absorbed every ounce of venom she could muster. I leaned back in my chair, coldly observing her. There was no anger in my expression, only a quiet, calculated calm. "As you wish," I said softly, letting each syllable land deliberately. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't bravado. It was a declaration. The storm of betrayal swirling between us didn't frighten me. It only clarified the path I had to take. The living room, once a haven, had become a battlefield. The ambient hum of the city outside couldn't drown out the pulse of tension radiating between us. She was defiant, unrepentant, confident in her audacity. I was unmoved, detached, as though a part of me had anticipated this confrontation for years. I had seen the signs, the late nights, the secret messages, the distant stares, but tonight it all crystallized into an unspoken verdict. Our marriage was over, not in words, but in actions. She crossed her arms, her eyes flashing with pride, fury, and perhaps a hint of expectation. She had believed her revelation would provoke me, break me, drive me into some desperate reaction that would tether me to a life I no longer wanted. But I had spent months disentangling my emotions from her manipulations, examining my desires, and discovering a strength I hadn't known I possessed. "Do you really think I care about proving anything to you?" I asked, my voice low but deliberate. She blinked, caught off guard by the utter lack of shock in my tone. Her smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. You're not reacting," she said, incredulous. "Most men—" "I am not most men," I interrupted, standing slowly, letting my presence fill the room. "You wanted real men? Fine. I've realized I don't need any of the ones you flaunt. And I certainly don't need someone who believes fidelity is optional, yet demands attention and respect." Her lips parted slightly, her usual arsenal of insults momentarily silenced. I had always known she craved power, validation, and dominance, but what she hadn't realized was that power meant nothing when faced with someone who no longer sought her approval. I walked past her, collected my briefcase and coat. Each step echoed like a verdict in the empty space between us. I didn't glance back, didn't offer a final word of reproach. My silence was louder than any confrontation she could have staged. The betrayal she believed would shatter me had, instead, crystallized my resolve. By the time I reached the door, I had already mapped the life I would lead beyond this room, beyond this marriage. No screaming matches, no tears, no endless debate, just the quiet liberation that comes from walking away on your own terms, unshackled from a toxic entanglement. The doorknob clicked, and the last vestige of our shared life seemed to dissolve behind me. Outside, the air was crisp, bracing, and infinitely forgiving. I felt each inhale as a renewal, each exhale as a shedding of past illusions. The streets were alive with possibilities I had never allowed myself to consider. Friends, adventures, passions, all waiting for someone willing to reclaim them. I remembered the late nights she had spent laughing into a phone, the hush of her whispered secrets, the glances exchanged when I wasn't around. Each memory, once sharp and painful, now served as a guidepost, a reminder that I deserved authenticity, respect, and loyalty. Weeks later, I would hear rumors of her exploits, the same ones she had confessed with pride, meant to wound me, but they no longer stung. They were artifacts of a life I had abandoned, remnants of a cage I had unlocked for myself. I was free, and freedom tasted like sunlight on cold glass, sharp, invigorating, and entirely mine. The hardest part of betrayal isn't discovering it. It isn't even feeling the knife twist in your chest. The hardest part is choosing yourself when everyone else believes you should bend. I had bent too long. Tonight, I did not bend. I walked away, and in that act, I found an unexpected satisfaction, a silent triumph that no amount of audacity from her could overshadow. As I boarded a taxi to the airport, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, I smiled, a small, quiet smile that carried years of pent-up frustration, fear, and longing. This was not an ending. It was a beginning, a life unbound by the deceit, the games and the toxic desires of someone who believed love could coexist with betrayal. By the time the plane lifted off, leaving the familiar skyline behind, I felt the tension of months, years, perhaps a lifetime, dissolve into the horizon. I didn't know what awaited me, new cities, new faces, new challenges, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never allow anyone to compromise my self-worth again. And in that knowledge, I finally understood what it meant to be untouchable. Not because I could dominate others, but because I had reclaimed myself entirely.